And we are live. Okay. Hey everyone, this is Nicholas Roman, author and creator of Scratch Health, How to Create a Whole New You in 90 Days from Scratch. Along here with my partner, as always, Pedro Cruz.
Hey guys, how's it going?
There it is. So another week, another rendition of There it is. There it is. That was my my little intro. Well, you gotta do it right this time. Hold on. And this is the Healthy Hangout. Oh, you missed the cue?
I thought you were
Damn.
gonna do it.
That's horrible. All right, I'm done. I'm done. All right, so actually, we got some good news for everybody who listens. Next week, we're going to be having a special guest, Greg Heineman, which is a clinic director of Egoscue in Westchester, New York. It's a very, it's a quality, very good, well, let me rephrase that. It's a high quality postural clinic that teaches, as it sounds, it teaches you exactly how to get your body and your posture right back on track to where it needs to be. And he actually did an assessment on me some time ago. I have it on the YouTube channel for Scratch House, so people can actually see what his what his abilities are like, what his methods are like, what his assessment is like, his style, how he treats people, some recommendations that he does. It's actually all there. It's a good 45 minutes or an hour. It's a three-part series that I put up that shows you exactly what the process is. And I'm not going to go into it too much because I want him to talk about it. He's going to answer some questions about that and just talk about what he does and how he helps people. So he'll be here. He'll be here with us next week on the Healthy Hangout sharing his expertise. So that's a big deal.
And I'm also he's actually been able to help me with some long-term injuries that I've had, and I gotta tell you, it's really good with the stuff that he does.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I don't want to steal his shine too much. So I mean, I could go into it and we could talk about it, but rather than do that, I'd rather hear it from him directly. That way, we can go back and forth with him a little bit, and obviously, hear some of his thoughts and his methods and his philosophy on with stretching and posture, because that stuff is very important. And I know we speak about that all the time, and that's something that I believe most people still to this day, in my opinion, they don't really take too serious, or they don't put at the forefront of their health and fitness programs. Everybody wants
Right.
to look good, everybody wants to have the muscle and they want to do this and that, but they're not really willing to do some of the basic fundamentals like spend 15, 20, 30 minutes stretching because they see that as not sexy, or they see that as boring.
Right.
And and we both know that without that you have injuries, you have tears and imbalances and dysfunction. So a lot of that comes from proper stretching and all of that. So Greg will be here with us next week. But one of the things that we're going to talk a little bit of something that I was listening to, or that I was reading about today, which is pretty serious. So we're going to have a little bit of a serious moment for some news. That's my serious face. It's no joke. Well, what happened is I was reading on the World Health Organization. They were actually talking about the fact that, and this is global, this is not just here, that people are actually becoming resilient to antibiotics.
That's scary
And
right there.
yeah, they were saying one of the biggest problems is that people are getting sick so often, and that they, between the countries that they live in, the kind of sicknesses that they're susceptible to, plus just general sicknesses like colds and flus, and just things that could be avoided because they're getting sick so often with these other types of sicknesses and diseases, that they're taking these antibiotics so much that, like anything else, if you overdo it, the body can figure out a way to know what to do with it. So they're taking these antibiotics so much, the body's figuring out how to build an immunity to it. So now in a situation where they're really sick and they really need that, I think I was reading about was it gonorrhea, and some countries that are hit by a storm, and they're not able to cure a lot of these people because their body has built up a tolerance for these antibiotics. And they were saying that it's not just here, it's not just in any particular region of the world, but it's actually global, and it's getting worse. And this is not something that's happening in the future, but this is something that's actually taking place right now.
I mean, that's crazy. I mean, if you think about it, you can get the common cold and pretty much not be able to survive that. and that's pretty much what they're saying we're moving to. And I think that stems from the fact that people just aren't taking care of themselves, they're not eating correctly, and we're pretty much bringing this upon ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that stuff, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and say that if you do the right things, you'll never get sick and live in a kind of fairy tale type world. I mean, it is possible you could be as healthy as you want to be. You can be doing all the right things, but there's so many factors that go into potentially getting sick that even though you might be 100% on it nutritionally and maybe working out, but because your work schedule, maybe you don't get the kind of rest that you need, and the stress is, the stress will wear your body down, you lack of sleep, and you can catch a little cold every now and again. But a lot of that, as they were saying in the article, and in my personal belief, a lot of that can be avoided because that's just a situation or just a mindset of prevention. Because you
Right.
think about it, when we get to the point where even the medicines that do work in helping us to break down whatever diseases that have, and like they said, in flus and gonorrhea and some of these sexually transmitted diseases that they're going to have a hard time treating now, a lot of that stuff is preventable, and a lot of that
Right.
stuff is something that you could. It's lifestyle driven. You know, getting a cold every now and then is one thing, but being sick 2 or 3 times a year. I mean, I know some people personally that it's like clockwork, where every winter, sometimes even every spring, they'll go through 1 or 2, maybe even 3 colds or 2 colds and a major flu every year, like clockwork. And we all know that's a lot of that is just most of that is from what they're doing, what they're eating, what they're not eating, and what they're not doing. So
Right.
you know, just something for people to consider, that this is pretty serious. It's not nothing to joke around about, and it's actually really happening right now. So, word to the wise for people out there: if you haven't taken the time to really start to get serious about your own health program or your own health for you and your family, seeing this kind of news kind of gives you an idea that this is probably something that you're gonna want to start to do and want to start to really make preparation for, especially going forward.
Now, I think that for those of you that are listening, I think you should take out maybe 5 or 10 minutes and read the article. Um, Nick, where can they go to read this article?
If you just Google WHO, WHO or World Health Organization, it pops up. It's a big website. I think it pops up first on Google, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
It's the
And
very first thing that pops up.
yeah, and since it's like the news of the day, so if you click on it, it's the first article, so it breaks down pretty much everything we spoke about and more. It goes into specific details about what's happening and their ideas and etc. So it's there for everybody to go check out. Something like I said, something to read into, something to consider when you're putting together your health, your lifestyle, and just dealing with your family. Because I'm not a big proponent on always using medicines, because I think that a lot of stuff we can treat naturally, and I feel that we leave the medicines and the serious things for serious times. That way,
Right.
when you need those things to work, they're going to work because your body is not used to it, it's not ready for it, it's never had to deal with that stuff. So, God forbid you're in a car crash, something happens, and you're in a situation when you need some particular type of medicines, your body will respond that much faster. So, but like I said, that's all available on the website to learn about it. But prevention, in my opinion, is going to be kind of the movement of the future, I think, and it's kind of happening now. You see it. You see even fast food companies trying to take advantage a little bit of like the wellness movement or eating clean type ideas that are happening, and you see them throwing out with their commercials between the quote unquote healthy salads, and you see them changing the menus, and the
Those
commercials are a little
McDonald's with the little apples and
right,
the little thing of milk.
the little green apples. That's what I think about that. But you see it happening, so it's obviously something that's happening now, and it's going to only get better. People are going to be going more into that realm. So,
Right.
um, like I said, I think that's where we need to be. It's all about prevention, and that's what Scratch Health is all about. Just figuring out and teaching, not figuring out so much, although we're always learning, but teaching the fundamentals. It's like I like to use the analogy of basketball a lot because it's one of my favorite sports. But so many people, they want to do crossover dribbles and they want to do all this fancy stuff and they want to hit the shot at the end of the game to win the game, and they haven't done the fundamentals to get themselves to a position to do the more advanced stuff. And just like in any sport or in any athletic or even any business or even at your career, you can't be the top of the top. You can't do the things you need to do when you haven't mastered the fundamentals. So fundamentals
Right.
of health is prevention, is stretching, is breathing, is water, is all these things that we teach about and speak about. So actually,
Right.
speaking about stretching a little bit, Just kind of wanted to go into that a little bit because I think that's a good segue. We I think I spoke about it a little bit before, but most people they don't keep or they don't do stretching as much as they should because they don't really feel the importance of it, or they think that it's something that is boring or it's just kind of a chore. They look at it as the after effects. Okay, I did a 45-minute workout. I'll do a 5-minute stretch and I just get it done. It's just kind of like something to get done versus something that they should be focusing on.
Right. Sure,
And
important.
yeah, and because of posture, because of sitting. I know we were talking about it just a little while ago, Pete. What you were talking about the sitting positions and what happens when you're sitting too long is from a postural standpoint.
Well, when you talk about stretching, a lot of people have the misconception that stretching is just something that you do before you work out. And where they miss out is that stretching, it brings a lot of benefits, not just to the body but also to the mind. So as you're talking about what happens when you're sitting down a lot, what studies have shown that a lot of people work in an office and they sit in front of the computer and they're typing like this all day. I don't know if you can see me, it's like that. So what tends to happen is that the chest muscles here, because you're in this position here, they get tight. We don't realize it because we associate muscles getting tight when we're working out, and you feel that pump. But because you're in this position all day, it gets tight because you're forcing your shoulders in like this. Now, what tends to happen is when your shoulders come in like this, I don't know if you see the shoulders like that. It puts
Hmm.
a lot of stress on the neck, and ultimately, what does that creates tension. So stretching helps to relieve that, and it helps to also fix the posture up, and put your body in alignment where it needs to be. I mean, we used to work in Nick and I used to work in an office some time ago. You remember how everybody used to be doing that.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know what it is? Our natural tendency too, for people is we have a natural tendency towards flexion. And when I say towards flexion, is towards, like you said, towards coming inward versus extension, which is going outward. Look at that freshness. But the natural tendency is to go inward towards flexion, and that's kind of that's gravity doing its thing on us because it's the path, right? Most people are inclined to go towards the path of least resistance. So
Right,
because we're so inclined to do that, and gravity's always weighing down on us, we start to go inward, right? And just it's just over time we keep going further and further in. Muscles start to shift from where they need to belong, and they start to go towards almost towards that fetal position because that's where we come from, that fetal type position where everything is flexed inward. And with that, that's great when you're little tight, but as you get older, the idea is to go in the opposite direction and create more strength and power and structural integrity through extension.
right,
And most people are not getting enough of that extension through their workouts, through their stretching, through their programs, and that the extension part of it is where you start to counteract the imbalances and the dysfunctions that we have or that we get just because of our day-to-day activities and lifestyles. And a lot of people don't realize that just by doing regular things, whether it's working at your office and typing on a keyboard all day, or even if you're a messenger and you walk around a lot, or it kind of really doesn't matter what you do. You're always setting off your alignment and your posture because of the activities you do. We do these repetitive motions, and so because of these repetitive motions, we get these imbalances.
right,
And so the stretching process helps to just say, you know what, you got these imbalances, but at least you're doing the opposite of that. So if you're consistently, like for example, somebody who's always doing push-ups, right? You see these people they're doing these push-ups all the time, and they get that flexion where it's kind of they look like this. Their arms kind of come up and their chest is up and their traps up, and they're always walking around like that little dog from the Bugs Bunny cartoons with the green sweater with the little hat from back in the 80s. But they don't work the opposite muscle, so they you tend to see them. And I used to see that at the gym all the time. They would be rubbing their trap, and they would have the icy hot of the Bengay, and yet at the same time they're doing bench press. So they just did 100 or 200 push-ups. Now they're doing bench press. So they're consistently working the same muscle in the same way and creating those imbalances rather than doing the opposite, which is extension, and maybe doing some bent over rolls or what do you call that? Some rows, rowing on the rowing machine, or bent over rows, so that they can get that extension going, work the antagonistic muscles, so that
right.
you get the flexibility. And with stretching, without getting into it in too much detail, there's so many different types of stretching. It's just a matter of finding out which one you like and which method you like. You have You have static stretching, which I know I'll let you go into in just a second, Pete, because that's kind of your specialty. Static stretching for everybody, it's kind of like it's almost like yoga type poses. A lot of martial artists, kung fu practitioners are big into the static stretching because you'll see them be able to put their head on their knee and do all kind of extreme type stretches. You have the dynamic stretches, which I'm a big proponent of for the Scratch Health program. I utilize both dynamic and static stretching, which kind of help, in my opinion, to help both sides of the spectrum. So for those of you who are actually interested in finding out more about that, you can check out the YouTube channel and the book that we have on our website, scratchhealth.com, and you'll learn more about how dynamic and static help you. But then there's also ballistic stretching, which is uh, to explain ballistic stretching. As a matter of fact, that's kind of like those stretches when you touch your toes, and you might have been in high school and you're trying to touch your toes, and then the gym teacher might say, well, if you do a little bounce, you can touch your toe, but then later on some experts said it's not good to bounce when you stretch because you can hurt yourself and things. But Walter Payton, one of the best running backs of all time, was a big proponent of ballistic stretching. He would do things like that where he would lean over, touch his toes, and even though he was flexible, he would do a little slight controlled bounce so that he can go a little bit further than he was normally able to do, and he felt that it worked for him. So that's also one of those things that you kind of have to find out for yourself what works for you, what doesn't work for you, because obviously we're all different. But going back into the static stretching, Pete, why don't you kind of give them an idea of the difference between what a normal person who really hasn't been in a program in a while and just wants to get some basic stretches done versus somebody like yourself and other martial artists who now do a lot of those extreme type stretches or really in-depth stretches, and what the benefits of kind of both of them are.
Well, let's talk about the benefits. Obviously, one of the things I touched up on was obviously how the posture gets straightened out, gets strong posture. Also, something that we already touched up on. When you stretch before you work out, before any exercise, you're decreasing the risk of energy. I mean, I'm sorry, not the risk of energy. You want energy, guys. The risk of look at that. Come on, I lost my mind over here just watching. Obviously, you don't want to get hurt, so you're decreasing injury. One of the things you were talking about that was key is you want to stretch the muscle out. A lot of people they have what when I used to train with my kung fu instructor. I used to train in the Shaolin Temple years ago. I trained there for a very long time. And he was like, he used to go, they got very little muscle. Little muscle. And he was a very big I guess you could say proponent of the ballistic stretching. And let me tell you something. And all the Shaolin monks, they do the static stretching. They do have some dynamic stretching, but what you'll notice, these guys, they do a lot of ballistic stretching. And these guys, their flexibility was unbelievable. And you got some people that say that, if you do ballistic stretching, you're going to lose power. These guys were, I mean, some of these guys, they probably weigh like 120 pounds, but the level of power and strength that they were able to generate in their body, which, by the way, was, a lot of that was coming because of their flexibility. It was amazing. So, you want to, stretching is one of those things you want to do. If you want to get stronger, you want to improve your flexibility. And by the way, guys, it just helps you feel better. I know, Nick, that, Nick, you and me and Nick always talk all the time how you like to stretch in the morning. Doesn't that make you just feel a lot better when, you start the day off, your body's a little bit more loose? You kind of feel like you can take a deeper, fresh air.
Yeah, well, when you're sleeping at night, you build up lymph in your system, and we don't have a pump that releases lymph into our body and lymph, what it does is it carries like the toxins and the stuff that's in the bloodstream. There's really no way to move that stuff around. Like for our blood to move around our body, the heart is the pump. So the more efficient your heart is, the more it pumps and everything like that. But as far as the lymph system is concerned, there's nothing to pump that toxin out. So the way that you're gonna get that stuff out of you and to feel better and to get all the benefits that come from that is through oxygen. You have to get into motion. You have to get that stuff out of you through the breath. You activate it through the breath. And one of the best ways to activate it through the breath is through stretching. Whether it's dynamic or static or otherwise, you're moving the body, you're allowing that lymph to move through your system. And we all know, even if you've never been somebody who's been big into stretching, but if you try to go and touch your toes and you're not somebody who's flexible, you see how tight all of a sudden you feel like you can't breathe, and you notice that you have to take those bigger breaths, those deeper breaths. That way you can kind of get lower on the position so that you can go down further. and the more oxygen you intake, the more flexible you can become. And the reason for that is because usually that tightness comes from a lack of oxygen or lack of blood in that area, which is where a lot of that stiffness comes from. Oh, so when you wake up in the morning, you got all that stuff, plus you have like a lot of lactic acid buildup, and so that's why some, especially as you get older, you wake up and you got that feeling where you're like really stiff. And especially if you're in a cold region like in New York in the wintertime, we had a brutal winter this year. You wake up in the morning and you feel like an ice cube. And so you kind of get out of your bed and you feel like if somebody hits you, you might shatter into 1,000 pieces. So by getting a nice, a nice calm, it doesn't have to be anything dramatic, but a nice calm, warm stretch in the morning. Either the way I do it is dynamically, and I have my own methods of dynamic stretching that I do that we talk about in the program. But I do my dynamic stretches in the morning, and it might run me about 15, 20 minutes. And by the time I'm done through some of these slow, controlled movements, you do feel better because the blood is flowing in the body. Your joints and ligaments have been loosened up from the fasting, or not the fasting, but the lack of movement because of the sleeping positions that you might have been in. So you overall feel great, and we all know that when you start off the morning great, the rest of your day tends to be great. So my attitude is why not start it off great every day? That way you give yourself the best chance of having a great day, and one of the best ways is through that stretching, through stretching and through opening up the oxygen and getting the blood going.
You touched up on twice how it helps with the blood flow, and a lot of people I guess because maybe a lot of people don't know, but when you stretch, like you said, the blood flows, but also you got to remember that the nutrients in the body, they're gonna flow a lot better and go to the specific muscles, especially the muscles when you work out, the muscles that are sore. With the more flexible, the more you stretch, the more blood and nutrients you have going into all those muscles. Like I said, especially the ones that you've been working out that are sore. So having flexibility in your stretching is very important, and that's just touching on the body. I mean, when you can look at what's stretching and flexibility, it plays on the mind. It's very big. I mean, we're talking about, if you take out, for instance, I don't know, let's say 10 to 15 minutes, and you stretch. Now, it doesn't have to be dynamic or ballistic. It could just be some very simple, static stretching. Very simple stretches, guys. But if you do that for 10 to 15 minutes, you realize how calm your mind gets, especially after a long day of work. If you have a long day of work and you're dealing with all kinds of crap from all different angles, you come home, man, and you just take a couple minutes, maybe before you shower, maybe after, and you stretch for 10 to 15 minutes, you'll see how a lot of that just goes, it just goes away. It helps to release the tension. That's why a lot of people, they like to do yoga and they like to do Pilates because it helps them with that. So
Right.
guys, don't underestimate the power of stretching because it's not just for the pre-workouts, although, that's something that Nick and I believe you should do before the working out so that, again, you don't get injured. But it has so many benefits and it's overlooked. It really is.
Yeah, especially, yeah, you're right. The after work is big too because I kind of do both. I kind of do in the morning before I do what I got to do for the day. I do my thing that I just spoke about, and then when I'm back home at the end of the day, depending on whatever time that is, sometimes you've been going, at full pace, 100 miles an hour all day long. By the time you get back, you feel kind of fried.
Right.
And you're right, when you do maybe 10 minutes or 8 minutes, whatever it is of stretching, it just opens you up and you just like, okay, you get that second wind. You get the oxygen moving again, you get the blood flowing, you start breathing. Because what people don't realize is that what gives you energy, it's not so much all the time about what you're eating. Although that's, of course, we all know, I mean, that's just common sense. It is important. Yes, naturally, the nutrition, what you're putting into your body is gonna create that energy for you to fuel your body. Of course, that's granted. But that aside, just breathing, even if you were unhealthy, if you were just totally eating, crap all the time, and you were just starting to learn about this health game, and you decided that you want to start making some new changes, just by activating the breath and breathing more deeply on a regular basis, you'll notice how your oxygen levels or your energy levels actually start to skyrocket little by little just because you're breathing more. So many
Right.
people, they breathe so shallowly nowadays. They don't take these deep diaphragmic breaths. They breathe from their chest versus from their like from their core, from the middle of their stomach, from their pelvis down below, and breathe out. They kind of breathe these little short, like these little short, shallow breaths from their chest all day. And a lot of times when you go through the day, you're stressed out, you're doing this and that. You tend to realize or tend to not realize that you're not breathing. For most
Right.
people, when they get those panic attacks, some people get panic attacks, they get really stressed out or they get anxiety. If they was to actually look out from themselves and just look at what they're doing or what they're thinking, they would come to realize that they're not breathing deeply.
Right.
That a lot of that stuff stems from just the lack of breath. So, without beating a dead horse, something to definitely make a part of anybody's program and to look into more seriously. And of course, online, there's a million resources for you to learn and see some of the stretches in action on YouTube and other places, or even on my own on the Scratch Health website through our books and stuff. We teach a lot of that. So,
You
but
know,
to go
you,
ahead.
I've heard you talk a little bit about the programs and what we teach, and I don't think we've ever really given our listeners an idea of how what we do has actually worked and actually changed people's lives. Why don't you touch up on that a little bit and give some of our listeners an idea?
Okay,
No, no, since you're going up, it's this way.
that's that's what it is. So, all right. Well, the reason. See, here's the thing. Scratch Health is a philosophy and a methodology. It's more of a two-in-one. You're getting both ideas from here. So when people are going to work out or they want to get some kind of result, their first idea is to go straight to fitness
Right,
because they look at the end. They don't look at the beginning. They want to start with the end result and kind of work backwards. And it's not their fault that kind of like how they've been trained through infomercials and commercials. They don't really know exactly where they need to start from. So they start from where they think or what they're taught, what they see, that's where they need to begin from.
right,
And so what Scratch Health does is it's a philosophy and a methodology of showing people how you can go from where you are, showing you where you are first of all, and then how to go to exactly where you want to be, and showing you exactly progressionally how to do that. And so what I've done is with the Scratch Health program is more of a integrated type process where everything builds over the next one. And what I
right,
mean by that is it's when you do a program like a P90X or Insanity or something like that, the minute the program starts, it's kind of like boom, you're in the program and it's 100 miles an hour and you got to keep up. And if you don't keep up, the best advice they have for you is, hey, you can't keep up, so then what you do is you take a break or you do whatever you can do and you rest and then you come back in to join us when you can. Now, that may very well be true, and for some people, a lot of that does work. But what I find that it does to a lot of people, in my opinion, people that I've spoken with, and some of the surveys that we've held, is that actually makes people feel bad about themselves. Because if you're overweight and you're really sincerely trying to change your life for the better, and you put on a program where you see this guy who looks totally fantastic, knocking out push-ups like it's absolutely nothing for him, and he's knocking out 20, 30, 40, 50 push-ups, and you're supposed to try to keep up with this guy, and maybe you get to 9 push-ups, and you're like, oh my God, I can't keep up with this dude. This is crazy. And then he's telling you to just step out of the program for a minute, keep letting the program run, and you're sitting there on the sidelines looking at everybody else work out. And what it does is it just it's kind of like when you're in school and you're like that kid that's left out,
it's
and nobody
disheartening.
wanted. What's that?
It's disheartening.
It's disheartening, exactly. And you don't want to be that kid that's left out in the class. You don't want to be that kid that's left out while everybody else is having the fun or doing the things, and you kind of feel like the outcast. And I just don't. So from that perspective, one of the reasons why I created Scratch Health in the way that it is that it is progressional. So that when you're doing the program, it's going to push you beyond the point that is beyond your comfort zone, but it's never going to push you to the point that you can't do it and you're going to feel like you're out of this game or you're not a part of the system. You
Right,
can progressionally do it. You can feel good about it, and it starts with the basics, and that's something that a lot of people don't like to or want to deal with because we all, like I said, we want to go and do a crossover dribble before we learn how to dribble the ball basically and
right.
run up and down the court with the ball. But what we're going to do is we're going to start from the foundation and work our way up. So the reason why the Scratch Health system works so well, and why I've had actually, and this is not to brag, but when I was running the school and running all the classes that I had at the point with the people coming down to mostly female, a lot of women are into health more than men, even though I had a mix, but I had a 100% success rate. I mean, everybody that joined the class and followed the steps and followed the program and followed my advice, they all lost 10, 20, 30, whatever their goal was. They all did it. And the reason for that was because it was never beyond their reach. It was always within their grasp, and because they understood the fundamentals, which is what I was beating into everybody's head from the beginning. Why? Because when you have the fundamentals, I'm not always going to be there with you. When you know the fundamentals, if I'm not there with you as a trainer or somebody pushing you as a coach, not really as a trainer, but as a coach, as a teacher to guide you along, you know fundamentally what you need to do and how it works and why you should do it. And I think that when you learn, when you know why you're doing something, you tend to get longer lasting results because you know why you're doing it and you know how it works. So now you say, okay, well, I'm going to do it because X, Y, and Z. When you just do something because you say, well, this guy said to do it and look, he looks great, that's nice, but that doesn't help you because you don't know fundamentally why you're doing these things. So when you get the fundamentals down, you understand why integrity of your structure, posture is important. You understand why breathing is important. You understand the nutrition, and you go through the health acrostic, and you start to learn the fundamentals. When you finally get into the actual movement parts and the freedom movements, what I teach, and later on the freedom movements lead into the forge movements and unlocking your body, all of these things are progressional. So because it's progressional, because they understand the process and they understand the philosophy and then the methodology of how to implement that philosophy, that's why they're always able to get the results time after time. And it's a system, and that's the whole purpose of having a system, which most programs out there are not really. It's a system that has proven results that you can do over and over and over again.
So kind of like what you're saying is, just so people could get an understanding, it's more like it's not a cookie cutter system. It's kind of more of like a personal one-on-one approach.
Yeah, it is. It is a one-on-one approach. The way it's kind of designed for everybody who reads the books and follows the program, it's almost like the system itself is your coach. And I did that in a way on purpose because one of the things that I never liked, especially when I was trying to get in shape initially, is in terms of building more muscle. When we've talked about this, and I even have it on the website, the different pictures. I've gone up and down from being bigger at 200 pounds when I was big into weightlifting and powerlifting, and trying to learn some of that stuff and different ideas and different methods of training. I never felt like I could do it on my own if I didn't have the person there who was teaching me because I didn't have the processes down. I didn't know
Right.
exactly how to do it. So I felt like I needed a trainer all the time, which I did because had I hadn't had somebody who knew exactly how to teach me the proper technique and forms, I would have, killed myself along the process, or I would have gotten no results.
Right.
So, but the thing with that is that it also could be very expensive. And my mindset is I always like to come from the process where the mindset where I like to put together something for people that there's no gotchas. It's going to get them the result that they want. It can teach them exactly what they need to do, and they'll be able to do it consistently with or without anybody around. And so that's what the system does, and that's why I'm big on systems. Now my brother, you know my brother, he's me and him are very much alike in the sense that we like things systematized. We've always been that way, and we created this very specific towards the system because a system is something that can be duplicated over and over and over again. It's like, when you have a scientific evidence and then you can do the experiment and then you get the same result. It's the
Right.
same process. So when they follow the scratch process, that's why it's titled scratch, because it's a systematic, consistent results that they can achieve through correct habits. And so all we're about is teaching them the methodology and the philosophy of having the correct habits, knowing exactly what to do on all fronts, from nutrition to the actual exercises later on to unlock their body, and then of course unleash the power that they have within them in flexibility and strength and energy and vitality, so they can go do what they need to do.
When I think about my past experience, for me to doing martial arts, uh, fighting. I mean, I've done it all. I mean, I really have. I've studied a lot of different martial arts. One of the things I noticed, like for instance, about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I started doing CrossFit. I joined up one of the CrossFit um, academies, one of the CrossFit schools. Which, by the way, guys, I really enjoyed it. I had a blast. Where I trained there for maybe 2 or 3 months, and I just had a blast. I mean, the environments are fun. And by the way, I'm not trying to sell them up or anything like that. I'm just telling you truthfully, I had a good time. Um, but like Nick said, you don't really get that one-on-one thing. It was like, you got the class, okay, this is what we're doing. And if you can't keep up with it, okay, then you just, you got to wait. And you catch your breath, and then you can join the rest of them. And then, in the beginning, because I never did it before, I kind of felt like, well, what? I've been training all this time, and these guys are being. I can't believe I can't keep up with these guys. What the hell's going on here? In the beginning, I was like, wow, this sucks. And now, mind you, I've been training all my life. I mean, my father started training me in martial arts and all different stuff. We told him I'm 5, 6 years old. I'm 30 something years old, and I'm in a class with a bunch of guys, and I can't keep up with them. So it was disheartening for me. So I
Right.
can imagine, someone that doesn't have that background, has never really truly worked out, trying to keep up, with one of these programs, which by the way, Nick and I are not saying that these programs are not good. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is what we're trying to show you guys the difference of, what these guys do and what we believe and how our approach, to it. So it's just, by the way, Nick, we're talking about these different programs. Uh, why don't you get, what's the difference? What, in your opinion, what's the real major difference between what we do and with all these different programs? I mean, some of these programs, they got you dancing. Some of these programs got you doing all kinds of hit training. Some of these guys got you doing hip hop dances. Some of these things, they got you doing all kind of craziness. What makes us stand out, Nick, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, this right here, look at that. Freshness. No, but seriously, what well, the thing is, I want to let everybody know that what's important is anything that you do is any movements that you do is better than no movements. So there is really no wrong program. And I always tell people that anybody who came to my classes in the past, anybody who talks to me about Scratch Health, even before I speak about Scratch Health and kind of teach them about the philosophy and everything along with that, I always say, hey, there's never a one fit solution for everything. We all have our different tastes and likes and things, and so there's no one size fits all for everybody. And if like you said, somebody might be into CrossFit, somebody might say that for them that sucks. Maybe they want to do dancing. It doesn't really matter as long as you move. I mean, the idea is to always move towards a healthier, more progressive lifestyle, and just get better and get healthier and get more fit. So any which way you do that, if it's consistent, that's what I'm about. If you're more consistent with doing a program that has to do with dancing or ballet, and that's where you can be at your best, and I think you should do that. But what makes us stand out the most is that with Scratch Health, and I kind of don't want to go back over the same points, but it really is what makes us stand out the most is that we have a systematic approach that can show people how to have consistent results. And the way we do that is that we reform their habits. And that's why I always go back to the name, because it really is that. I mean, we do have systematic, consistent results achievable through correct habits. And by implanting that in people's minds from the very beginning and showing them what the correct habits are, what that means for them, then when the times get tough, and any program you do, at some point either you get frustrated, you get tired, or it just gets a little tough. And if you don't know why you're doing it, if you don't know the reasons behind it, the fundamental ideas, or where it's going to take you, you're not going to be able to stay consistent. You're not going to be able to get those results. So we start off with the mind, and that's why I believe that we're different where others aren't. And when you start off with the mind, you build up that mind power. You get people fundamentally and mentally strong in saying, okay, they have a clear and concise mental picture of what this is about and what it can do for them. And because they have that idea, that picture in their head, they can in essence begin with the end in mind. And when they can begin with the end in mind, it's so much easier to reach the end, because they know exactly what it looked like, what it tastes like, and what it's going to feel like to transform themselves from where they are and shoot themselves into the future, into that new body that they want to become, or that new energy level that they want to obtain. And then once they adopt that philosophy, boom, there's the methodology of what we do and the progressional steps of how we do it. And when they put those two together, it's like you just can't lose. So
Right.
that's why that's what makes us different, is we cover everything from mind to body. And when you merge mind and body, there's nothing that you can't do.
Very good. Very good. You know what? Why don't we, and just to give them a little flavor, Nick, why don't we give our listeners a sample of maybe a beginner routine? What do you say?
Sample of a beginning routine.
You
Well,
know what
I,
I mean?
I would say, well, first of all, anybody wants to find out what a sample of beginning routine for Scratch Health is, they, it's you see me on the Scratch Health channel. You can go there. I believe I have over 200 plus videos. I'm sure there's one on there somewhere of me doing some of this stuff. I know we filmed a lot of it. So that's on there for everyone to go check out. We do have a lot of articles and things on the website, and of course there's always the book. But for anybody who's just beginning, something that they can begin with is the actual habit. And not to sound cliche or not to sound corny, is I don't ever teach people, and you can ask anybody who's ever in my class, when the first time they come to me, I don't, they'll ask me those kind of questions. What should I be doing? What should I be this? What should I? And the first thing I tell them is, hey, listen, how many glasses of water have you had today? And they look at me like I got four heads, and they say, what? How much did you sleep today? How many glasses of water did you have? And how many salads did you have today? And once they kind of look at me funny, they'll give me whatever their answer is. And 99% of the time, they're not hydrated enough. They are not eating enough greens in their diet. And so if they can't be disciplined enough to do something as simple as maybe drink what even basic doctors would say, which is 8 glasses of 8 ounces of water a day, some fundamentals, and get
Right.
themselves to the position where they're disciplined enough to at least have 2 salads a day, then there's nothing that I can do long term that's going to really be able to help them, because it starts from those baby steps. It really does start from the beginning. And if
Right.
that foundation is, you've heard, we've talked about this to a million people, which is like, hey, if you're building a house and your house is built with a weak foundation, it's only a matter of time. As you put more stresses in the house, as you put more furniture in that house, that foundation is going to crack under all the weight. So the same applies for your health and fitness program, where it's, if your foundation is not there, but you're starting to do all these heavy lifting and you're starting to do all these heavy disciplines, you're going to crack underneath all that pressure, and eventually you're going to
Right.
quit the program. And that's why so many people quit all these programs, because they crack underneath the weight of what they're not able to do, because the discipline wasn't there. So I start people out with getting themselves disciplined in a small way, because when you get yourself disciplined in a small way, it adds up to the bigger things later on. It's like it's like putting a little bit of money in your emotional bank account, and after a while you put a couple of dollars in, you start to eat one salad a day, then it goes to 2 salads a day, then maybe 2.5 salads a day, and now you're drinking water, and then you go to drinking the amount of water that you need. And so after a couple of weeks of this, you start to feel good, you build self-confidence, and you're continuously throwing dollars in your emotional bank account to the point where you got a lot of emotional money and you feel good about yourself. So now, if as a teacher I guide you along, and now it's time to push you a little bit, now it's time to really challenge you with some things, unlocking your body, which you might be stiff, which most people are, and now it
Right.
comes time to challenge you with that. Now you can handle it better. You got the self-confidence and you have the ability, because you say, hey, I did all this stuff. I'm a bad mofo. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. I can go do this. And it's a better place to be and start from than when you're disheartened, like with a lot of other programs, because you can't do the push-ups.
So at the end of the day, guys, it always comes back to working the fundamentals, working the basics, getting your mind right before you can get the physical looking. Speaking about getting the physical looking a certain way, Nick and I we've been getting a lot of questions, and summertime's coming, and a lot of ladies want to get their physiques in obviously summer shape, and with that being said, one of the major things that the questions we've been asked is, how do we get those glutes to look very nice, attractive, to get them looking perky again? And what we've done is we've put together just what we believe are some of the better exercises for you to get those glutes in tip-top shape. And it's going to require, guys, some work on your part. We're not, obviously we're not going to have time to go through all the routines and how that goes.
So this is Pedro's tips for firm buns for the summer, is what you're saying.
Firm buns. I prefer to say firm gluteus maximus and minimus. um, we put together a couple of exercises. I'm going to go through them, and then I guess me and Nick can just talk a little bit about them, and we'll pick which ones are his best ones, and which ones I believe are the best ones, and we'll take it from there. But let me just run through the list, Nick, and you tell me what you think. I put down Romanian deadlifts. It's very good. Um, I like to do side lunges, especially with the dumbbells. Sumo squats are phenomenal. Again, with those you can either do body weight You can use a dumbbell or you can use a kettlebell. Um, doing wide stance squats, doing squats with a goblet or a goblet squat. Basically, that means you're holding a kettlebell like this. They call that a goblet squat. So you hold the kettlebell here and you're squatting up and down. Step ups. For if you don't never heard of a step up, you can take those what do they call those things? What do you call those things, Nick, that they use in the aerobic class where they just step up on those? They're called steppers.
Steppers, I believe.
Yeah, so they're called steppers. So you can stack them up as many as you can, or you can use a chair, and you would put one leg on it and then just stand up. So those are called step ups. I like doing those with dumbbells. Again, the dumbbells. I mean, work. By the way, guys, the exercise that I'm giving you, I chose these because you can do this in your home. You don't have to go out and join a gym. You can do this in the comfortability of your house. 20 minutes. Lunges, again, with the dumbbell or without the dumbbells, if depending on what your level is. And then the last one, which is the granddaddy of them all, the barbell squat. So with those being said, Nick, in your opinion, give me maybe the top two or three that you like to do, or that you would have someone do.
Well, for women, and obviously this is when you talk about firming up your tush for the summer, that's obviously the women's biggest concern. You hear that all the time, especially as summer gets closer. I would say that number one, you always have to have safety in mind. So I come from the mental approaches. If you're doing this in your house, you may not necessarily have the weights. So I would always say that you want to start out with some of the basic fundamentals. So you got your lunges, which are always great. And you know what? There's ways to tax yourself on a lunge that can be just as difficult or even more difficult, excuse me, than using weights along with it. So I would say start off with the body weight lunge as well as a body weight squat. And there's different variations of the body weight squat. So I would say the top three that I would tell them to do would probably be a regular air squat, and then of course a lunge. And if you're in a position where you're strong enough to where these two things are kind of like easy for you, you want to tax yourself a little bit more, then maybe you want to go into something like a jumping lunge, where you go, obviously at the top of the lunge, you jump and you switch feet and you kind of, you go from foot to foot, and there's tutorials on how to do that online, of course. So you would do something like that, but those are great exercises, of course. It's kind of just accepted, and everybody knows that the best of the best, or as you said, the big mama, the granddaddy of creating a nice firm tush, a nice firm tush would be a squat. So you got to get your squats. Now what happens is once you start you can do it two ways. You can go towards endurance. For most women, they're looking, in my opinion anyway, from what I see and what I get asked, it's more towards they use the words like toning. They use the flexibility in there. So I would just say, you know what, why not just stick with the body weight, but just do high repetitions, because you can continuously go as high as possible, and you'll be surprised how obviously it starts to cut you up. It burns body fat because of the high repetitions. Your heart rate is going like crazy. Just with a basic air squat, most people, I can guarantee you, most people can't really do 100 air squats straight without stopping. It's really difficult, and if you can do that, you are far along the pace of becoming really in shape, or are probably in actually very good shape at that point. So if you can knock out 100 air squats or more, you're pretty bad. You're in pretty good condition there, and you got to keep that going. And that's where you want to be. You want to knock out the repetitions. You want to go and switch lunges, and then maybe do a little bit of circuit training with that. So you might start out with let's say you put 3 stations together, and you start out with a bodyweight squat, and then you go to the next exercise. Might be so you do, let's say, for time, 30 seconds, air squats, how many you can do. You knock that out. Time goes off, you go to the next station. Now you do lunges for 30 seconds. How many can you do? Then you go to the next station. Now you might do jumping lunges, or you might do a barbell squat. If you are some
Hey Nick, I think you're having some technical difficulties there.
and burn that fat. What was that?
Okay, there it goes. We lost you for a minute there.
Oh, did we? Oh man, that's not good. Technical difficulties, huh?
It's okay.
All right, but anyway,
Yeah.
so just utilizing it through the circuit training, and that's how you work towards building. But a lot of people want the magic pill, and everybody hates it. But it's just the fact is, you really want to get that magic butt, the tush and the round firm butt. you got to get to work. That's pretty much what it comes down to. You got to get to work. You got to put those reps in. You got to, if you're into the weights, you got to put those weights on that bar and get low. And there's really there's no easy way out. There's no other way around it.
I like to for women, I like to recommend doing the barbell squats. I think that, again, given that you're at that level, if you've never done this before, body weight is what you should do, and don't move from that until you can do 150 body squats in a row. Let's do that. Safety is very important, and so many people have hurt themselves, hurt their backs doing this exercise the wrong way, that it's just better off to do it correctly, stick to the basics. But I believe in the barbell squat. And by the way, this is not just about women that like to have a nice rear end. I mean, guys, you want to have a nice rear end because you want women checking you out too. So and it's the same thing. Squats. I also like to do from the squats. I recommend doing the side lunges. And here's why. When you're doing squats, the squats pretty much is going to work your quadriceps, the hamstrings. It's going to work your glutes. Obviously, it's also a complete body thing. It helps you with it, but the point is that we're talking about from the lower body. So since it's working everything there, okay, it just gives that appearance that you're extremely well put together. So the barbell squats is going to really do that. The side squats, what they do is they really focus on that underneath from the glute area. So I guess the gluteus minimus. So when you're doing the side squat, it's kind of it's very challenging when you go into that side position to come up again. So for people that kind of have your butt's kind of dragging a little bit, that's going to kind of help give it that lift. But it's also going to help with your hamstrings. And then to finish it off, the Romanian deadlift is a very good exercise, and it's going to help obviously with the hamstrings and your glutes, but it's going to give you a secondary effect on your lower back. Now, if you want to have that nice, rear end look, and I hope that this not coming out the wrong way, but I want to make a point here. It also, when you really look at it, it starts from the lower back. So when your lower back is nice and tight and it's in shape, it just gives that appearance. It makes it look that much more. You understand what I'm saying, Nick?
I agree. I agree. I mean, we're having some fun here, but no, but everything you're saying is 100% right, especially when it comes to talking about the posture of your squatting, the technique. You got to make sure that it's done correctly, because doing it right or doing it wrong will make the difference between how much more your butt stands out versus having back pain. So
Right.
the technique is everything, and for most people, I'm always leery about telling them to go do squats, because in my opinion, I've seen just almost everybody that I see at the gym, virtually everybody does it wrong. I mean, it's only a handful of people that I see or have seen over the last few years who squat properly or who deadlift properly. So I'm always a little bit leery when I tell people to go do that, because in my experience, not to say that they're not capable, but most people just really just don't know how to do it. And rather than seeing somebody hurt themselves, I'd rather see them do 100 or 200 regular air squats, which they'll get almost the same benefit, but they're just gonna have to work at it more because they got to do a ton of repetition versus getting hurt under a barbell. But I mean, there are, like I said before, if you feel confident about it, then deadlifts, going back to your original question, which is some of the top three, deadlifts and then barbell squats and then even lunges will definitely give you that body that you're looking for from the lower half. I mean, it'll really chisel you out.
Right.
Some incredible legs, incredible back, strong core, strong butt, and it gives you that powerful look. And that's what a lot of women, and especially men, like, to have that lower body powerful look, because that's actually what attractive to people. When they see
Right.
you look strong foundationally, it gives you that attractiveness. Like, wow, this person's in shape. This person's really strong. You can see it on them. That's the great part about having great legs or great backside, is because it shows that this person has power.
Right. And
When
guys, I'm sorry, Nick, what you just say?
No, no, go ahead.
And don't forget that doing these exercises also, guys, when done correctly, they help with the midsection, because your midsection needs to be tight during all these exercises. So it's going to help also get that washboard stomach that everyone's trying to get.
Yeah, no, and it's funny is I titled this talk when we started the Hangout, superfoods as part of the title, and I didn't realize we got into so many other things we never got a chance to get into superfoods. So we're gonna actually leave that for next week, and we'll
No, the
get a
week
chance,
after.
or the week after. That's right, because Greg is gonna be here next week. So we'll talk about that. But our time is pretty much coming to a close. This hour went by so damn quick. I didn't even realize. But to finish off on some of the final thoughts, number one, we'll get into superfoods next week. I don't want to make it seem like I was lying about what we wanted to talk about, or the week after, like Pedro said. But yes, your core, that's something that we could talk about probably for an hour in of itself. But when you're doing squats, when you're doing deadlifts, you're doing it properly. You got to tighten up that stomach. You got to tighten up those abs and your core, and you can actually build up a pretty solid midsection even without necessarily doing any ground ab work. A lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of confusion in that world when it comes to should they do crunches, should they do sit-ups, should they do this, should they do that. A lot of people don't realize you can actually build your core standing up without ever sitting on the floor and have a four-pack or have a, even if it's not defined, you can have a solid stomach that's flat, that's hard, and that's strong. So we'll get
Right.
into some of that stuff, and we'll talk a little bit about it as the weeks go on. But unfortunately, our time has come to an end. I think we had a pretty good show. We talked about a lot of things, and I look forward to working with you again next week. We got some training. We put out a new video for everybody who might have wanted to see that about the Scratch Fitness or the Scratch Fit that's going to be coming out. So we have a little trailer to that. We'll be having more trailers coming on as the time goes on to show people exactly how soon that's going to be coming out and what that's about. So there's a lot of stuff happening. We got a lot of people that are lining up to come on the show to talk about their expertise over the next few weeks. And so we'll kick it into gear as we get ready for this summer and help people with their summer health. So I look forward to seeing you next week, Pete. And this has been another episode of the Healthy Hangout.
Hang on.